Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. I'm doing my newsletter just a little bit earlier than usual, simply because the European elections are on today, and you've got up to, I think it's 10 p.m. in the UK to cast your vote. So I thought perhaps I would just, because I've covered Brexit a bit in this newsletter. For example, the first story I got for you under my Electric Scotland news section is the Westminster establishment seem blind to the political earthquake Nigel Farage is causing. It kind of goes on to say, last night, as a registered supporter of the Brexit Party, I went to London's Olympia for Nigel Farage's final European election campaign rally. He was on fire, and I suspect that his predicted victory in Thursday's election is but the appetizer for his presence on the domestic political stage for years to come, and which may shortly sound the death knell for both our main political parties. Yes, for the first time, it is not fanciful for me to imagine that Farage might yet be the next Prime Minister but one. A political earthquake of seismic proportions is taking place before our eyes, but our media and political establishment is blindly unable to take even the best precautions necessary to avert being buried alive in the earthquake he is about to cause. And it goes on for a wee bit after that. But that's really why I wanted to highlight it, because clearly, while voting, I think the Brexit Party is definitely going to have the overall majority from all the polling that's going on, but it's not going to change anything particularly right away. But what it will do is send a very strong message that, hey, you better get your act together, Parliament, or a lot of you are going to lose your seats. So I think in a way it's like the people's vote in a sense. So instead of wasting your ballot or not voting, I think you should go out there and vote for the Brexit Party and put a very strong message to the Westminster Parliament about where your intentions are. Okay, so anyway, that's one of the reasons for getting this out earlier. The news stories I picked for you this week, I've got Philip Hammond has arguably done more to scupper Brexit than the Lib Dems or Change UK. It says in the past 3 years there have been two constants in the Conservative Party through the Brexit process and the entire political landscape. Those are Theresa May and Philip Hammond. So an interesting article that. I've always been a bit dodgy about Philip Hammond. He's not a truthful guy at all. I mean, every forecast the Treasury put out has been wrong. Simple. Now, the next story is more women should toss the caber. Yes, in Canada, a country that has imported the Highland Games tradition, female participation has been on the rise for a number of years. So it's a really good story of that. I think you should have a wee read of that, especially you women out there. Get the muscles going. Next story is new moderator of Church of Scotland General Assembly installed in Edinburgh. So the General Assembly in Edinburgh, the Right Reverend Colin Sinclair took up the role of chairing the week-long event and representing the church throughout the year. Nigel Farage's Brexit Party surges into second place in Scotland. So Nigel Farage's Brexit Party has surged into second place in Scotland, threatening to wipe out the Conservative and Labour north of the border in this week's European elections. Another story about Scotland. Scotland's drug death rate is now the highest in Europe and still on the rise. The Scottish Government spent more than 740 million on tackling problem drug and alcohol use between 2008 and 2018. But Audit Scotland said there is still much to do to reduce deaths. Then the next story is Sir Michael Palin salutes legend of Scottish mountaineering as movie tribute recounts astonishing feats of Hamish McInnes. The renowned mountain rescue expert, whose bravery and inventions have saved thousands of lives, is a subject of a new documentary, The Final Ascent, narrated by Palin. Then another one is World Cup star Lana Cleland hails Rose Riley, the Scots football legend who blazed the trail for women from Ayrshire to Italy. So the trailblazing Rose Riley, who defied convention in the 70s to move to Italy to become a professional footballer, win the Golden Boot goal-scoring award and lifts the World Cup while representing the Italians. So, an interesting historical story there. Then the last one is Jim Sillars says it's impossible to vote for pro-EU SNP. Says former SNP deputy leader Jim Sillars has said he won't vote for the SNP in next week's European elections because of its stance against Brexit. So, that's the stories I have for you this week. So, on to Electric Canadian. Another copy of the Canadian Horticulturalist Up, volume 27 for 1904. I found a few more issues of the Wentworth Historical Society. This is the one that's in the Hamilton area of Ontario, Canada. So I've added volume 2. Then Osgood Hall, Reminiscences of the Bench and Bar by James Cleland Hamilton in 1904. So it's an interesting wee book. Then The African in Canada, The Maroons of Jamaica and Nova Scotia by J.C. Hamilton, written in 1890. And so that makes another interesting contribution to our ethnic histories. Then The Canadian Contingent is a patriotic speech by Canada's French nobleman Sir Wilfrid Laurier, Premier of the Dominion of Canada, delivered in the Canadian House of Parliament in reply to Mr. Bourassa's dissenting motion, March the 13th, 1900. And I just, I wasn't sure I was going to put that up until I read it, and I thought, yeah, I think that's good. You should have a read. Okay, and the final one is 6 Years in the Canadian Northwest by Monsieur Jean Dartang. It was written in 1882. It's in 3 parts really. The first part is about working in with the Northwest Mounted Police. But he's obviously telling you his story about his experiences, and it actually was written in French, but it's been translated to English. So we've got the English translation there for you to read. Then on to Electric Scotland. I've got The Livestock of the Farm by Robert Oliphant Pringle. It's a 3rd edition, edited and raised by James MacDonald, 1886. So, interesting book, that one. Lives of Simon Lord Lovat and Duncan Forbes of Culloden. This is by John Hill Burton, printed in 1847. So it's really interesting. Obviously, Culloden, the battle and all that. So that's Duncan Forbes in that area. But certainly, when I was reading it, I thought I don't know. I just thought it was rather interesting. Of course, if you're a Forbes or a Lovat or Fraser, then you might well be interested in that. Then McDuffie Clan Society of America. I got in the spring 2019 newsletter. And then I'm giving you a wee book, The Little Minister. It's by James Barry. Barry worked a new and rich vein of Scottish humour. And this is one of the books that they can recommend you read if you want to follow that. And then I have The Life of Colin Campbell, Lord Clyde. This is illustrated by extracts from his diary and correspondence. It was written by the Lieutenant General Shadwell in 2 volumes in 1881. So I've added this to the foot of a page about him because I already had some information about him on the site, but this obviously gives you a lot more. And then the final article in is about the guns. Basically, I noticed that there was a book that appeared in the Internet Archive. It's by Robert R. Gunn. And it's about the family, his history, and a lot of his descendants in America. So, and I noticed I didn't have a book up about the guns, as it happens. So that's now gone up onto the web page for the guns. And I noticed the link to the Australian Society is dead, so I've removed that. And I confirmed the other link works fine. Okay, and so the story for this week is the SNP's anti-Brexit antics create an awful precedent for those of us who want Scottish independence. It's written by William Ross. William Ross is the nom de plume of an oilman living in Aberdeenshire. So it's the quandary, really, because Scotland wants to be independent, but Nicola Sturgeon wants us in the EU. And my belief has always been yes independence, but no to being a member of the EU. And so he's exploring that within this particular article. So I thought, as it's Brexit voting time, maybe you want to read that before you decide which way to vote, or if to vote at all for that matter. So there you go, that's the newsletter for this week. Hope you enjoy it, and as always, feel free to comment and send me your thoughts. And I might just add that if you're in Canada and you're living in some place in Canada, and you might look to see if there's any history of your area of Canada, maybe look at the Internet Archive or something, and if you come across a book about the history of your area, just email me, let me know, give me the link, and I can go pick up the book and put it on the website. So you can help me develop the Connected Canadian one. And likewise, if there's a historical book on an area in Scotland that I don't have on the site, feel free to let me know and I'll grab a copy and put it on the site. So, you can help. And also, if there's anything in particular you'd like to learn or know more about that you haven't found on the site, let me know and I'll see what I can do about digging it up. So, a wee bit of help would be useful. Any contributions are well received, that's sure. Okay, well, anyway, I hope you get to vote in the European elections, and hope you vote for the Brexit Party. Okay, take care and have a good weekend.